We are here to honor the life and memory of William Calvin Sneed. I am Jennifer Sneed. I am his oldest of 4 children. We are overwhelmed and grateful for every one of you that have come, even if you just stopped in periodically or earlier. Those of you that have come to attend, we're grateful. Thank you. Before I share some of my personal memories and anecdotes, I'm going to read something that my brother sent to me a few days after he passed, and it seemed fitting. If everything we love will be lost in time, what is the point of love? Where there is fear of loss and grief and separation, there is attachment, not love. Love is the ending of fear. How can you say love is the ending of fear? The more I love someone, the more fear I have of losing them. Look carefully. Even if there were absolute proof that your loved one has gone to a place of pure bliss, no pain, no suffering, would you still grieve after their departure from your life? Yes, I would still grieve them. How can you be sad when your beloved is living in bliss? When you are in deep grief, what is going through your mind? I will be thinking about the good old memories and that these memories will not be repeated again. Hence, grief is not about the other person. It is about your loss of experience, your pleasure, the security you felt around them. Love is the capacity to hold someone with openness. Attachment is the demand that what you love must not change. Fear arises the moment the mind says, this is mine, this must stay, this cannot change. You fear losing them because your mind believes, if they go, something in me collapses. So the fear is not about the soul before you, it is about your identity, your comfort, your sense of continuity. Everything that can be owned can be taken. The moment this soul becomes your dad, your partner, your friend, the moment the mind wraps the word my around them, your stability becomes tied to their presence. Now their absence threatens you. Now time becomes your enemy. Now death becomes terrifying, not because love is wrong, but because ownership has entered love. So the question becomes, can you relate without owning? Can you say you are with me instead of you are mine? Can you love without turning the other into a pillar holding up your identity? This is where fear ends. Hence, the fear and pain we experience in attachment are not punishment, they are exposure. Heartbreak exposes dependency. Jealousy exposes insecurity. Loss exposes where we outsourced our wholeness. Without the pain, we would never question the illusion. If attachment always felt sweet, we would never grow beyond it. The newborn crawls because its muscles are weak. You attach because your inner stability is undeveloped. At first, you lean on another to feel whole. Then loss teaches you to stand. And then something extraordinary happens. You no longer ask, what is the point of love if it ends? Because you see, love never ends. Only the form does, and the form was never the source. You are that source. Ownership turns relationship into dependency. Dependency turns change into danger, and life is change. This is why everything that can be owned creates fear. But notice something deeper. You cannot actually own a soul. You can only experience it. The body will change, the roles will dissolve, the form will disappear, but the love you experienced was never stored in them like property. It arose only in the meeting in each passing moment. Love lives in the present. Attachment lives in memories and imagined futures. When you love from presence, nothing is lost. The form may disappear, the body may age, the relationship may end, but the capacity to love, which is your own nature, remains untouched. Love is the fire. Attachment is the smoke. The fire is warmth, light, aliveness. The smoke is jealousy, control, anxiety, comparison, insecurity. The smoke stings the eyes and makes you think the fire is dangerous, but the fire was never the problem. The problem was that we tried to breathe the smoke instead of tending the fire. In trying to come up with ways to honor and remember my father. I narrowed it down to 3 of his personality traits that probably had the biggest impact on me. So the first one is empathy. He had a capacity. He would try, even if he couldn't fully understand what you were going through. He sure tried. In going through, right? In going through his things following his passing, we came across multiple journals. This was one of them. And there is no theme for these journals. There is no organization. I mean, it ranges the gamut from jokes to political sayings to Vietnam reflections to, just all of it. But he wrote in here in December of 23, woke and its meaning. To be woke requires awareness or enlightenment or an enlightened mind, exposure to different cultures and different types of people. It requires maturity to realize that not everyone looks like you or thinks like you, and that's okay. One of the things that impressed me most about my dad is his ability to just love people where they were. He didn't have to agree with what they stood for. He had no problem with it. His kindness kind of superseded all of that. One of the things that popped into my mind is when I was in the early days that after my parents divorced, they were both single parents before they had met and remarried. So before Dad married Ellen, it was just my sister and I with him on the weekends and had a lot of mac and cheese and hot dogs. And I remember I was having some sort of a dramatic preteen moment. I don't remember what it centered around. Probably something my mom and I got in a fight over. But I was crying, and he had no idea what to do. But he stopped what he was doing and just put his arms around me and hugged me and said, "It's going to be okay." And I appreciated the effort. You know, he didn't always have the answers, but he tried. Kindness. He greeted everyone. He didn't even have to know them. He would wave to strangers. And if you didn't like him, that never stopped him from being friendly to you. But if you were lucky enough to call him family or friend, then you also got a hug because you meant the world to him. A few days after we lost Dad, a friend I was visiting with, we were reminiscing different memories about Dad, and he said, "You know, I am so glad that I got a chance to know your dad because he was always so kind and so nice. He always made a point to talk to me and my kids and hug us goodbye." And those are the kind of stories I like to hear because that was him. Funny. His sense of humor is unequaled. It ran the gamut as well. If you look up the definition of dad jokes, it should say term inspired by Bill Sneed, honestly. He had an off-putting sense of humor, but he always loved to be joking and laughing. We always used to gauge his state of mind, especially when he was in the hospital for any one of his heart issues. As long as he was joking, we're like, he's still in there. So my brother and sister and I have spent the last couple of weeks just scratching the surface of his possessions. And he has a safe in his bedroom. And it took us a few days to get into it because it was a whole combination and key thing. And there was a lot of keys in that house, but we could not find the one for the safe. Finally did. So we opened it up and we were going through things carefully. And there was a small can inside, which, because of what happened next, I had literally forgotten what was on the can, but I was reminded it was mixed nuts. And I did not remember saying this either because of the trauma that happened next. I must have said, "This better not be mixed nuts," because all I could think was, who would store mixed nuts in the safe and how long have they been there? That can't be good. So I got the lid off of it and don't remember anything other than something exploded. It turned out to be one of those spring-loaded snakes. And all I could think was, what in God's name happened to the mixed nuts? Because I didn't know what just flew out of the can. But everybody in the room, of course, lost it, started laughing. And I don't remember who. It might have been Derek that said, "Well, Dad got one last prank in." And I was the impatient guinea pig that had to open that can right now. My dad had an insatiable appetite for learning and reading. As far back as I can remember, he always taught me to never stop learning, never to be satisfied with what I know, and to always intentionally seek ways to broaden my knowledge. I could honestly talk for days about my memories of him, how much he loved his kids and his grandkids, and how he just sought to love others exactly where they were without judgment. One of the other things that, I know this was probably Vietnam War inspired, but he just wrote this one little thing in here, and it said, "Dying for freedom isn't the worst that could happen. Being forgotten is." I will never forget my dad. I will share his memories and his legacy for the rest of my life. Something that came to mind early on in the first few days, and I had to download an app that I didn't have in order to watch this movie, but I don't know if you've all seen the movie Peggy Sue Got Married. Way old, so if you haven't seen it, you've had time, sorry. I might spoil a little bit. There's a scene toward the end where Peggy Sue she's back in time, and she goes to see her grandparents who are not present. They're gone in present day, in her future life. And she tells her grandma that she's accidentally here from the future and is disappointed at the choices she made as a young girl. Her grandma gives her a bit of advice that has stuck with me since the very first time I saw that movie. She says, "The things that happened 50 years ago are more on my mind than the things that happened yesterday. Right now, you're just browsing through time. Choose the things you'll be proud of, the things that last." As we move through life, celebrations, losses, I want to encourage everyone to choose to hold the good memories close to your heart.
Okay, tough act to follow. The older sister. I'm Sherry. Some of you know me, some of you may not. Wasn't sure what to say. In fact, I procrastinated, as my dad taught me, about writing this. So I kind of threw it together last minute. So if it's wrong or my memories aren't right, I apologize in advance, but here we go. When you stand up here to talk about someone you love this much, it's hard to know where to begin. How do you fit a whole person, a whole life, into just a few minutes? I guess for me it starts on June 20th, 1974, great day, the day I was born, because from the very beginning, my dad was the person who made me feel safe. And honestly, that never changed. One of my earliest memories that keeps replaying in my mind is after my mother, my cousin's cousin, Angie, we called her Sissy back then, and myself, we were in a car accident in Lima, Ohio. I was around 5, was not in school yet, but I think Mom was picking up Sissy from school, so I was with her, if my memory serves me correctly. And I know my memory might not be completely accurate, but I do remember not being in a seatbelt. It wasn't really law back then. And I turned and I hit my tooth on the button of the back seat. I remember it was raining a lot. And I remember my mom had one of those plastic headbands that has the little teeth. And she must have hit her head hard because her headband broke and there were indentations left behind from the headband. So I remember these things like as vivid memories in my brain. Whether they're accurate or not, again, I don't know. So when the EMS worker arrived on the scene, they were trying to get me out of the car. They were trying to help, but I wouldn't let them touch me. I kept scooting out of their reach, and I was asking for my daddy. At that time, I didn't really think about what that must have felt like for him, getting that phone call as a husband and a parent. I wonder what was going through his mind as he was rushing there, not knowing what he was walking into. Obviously, this was before cell phones, so we didn't have a whole lot of information. I think of this often, and I really wish I would have talked to him about it, and I'm not really sure why I kept that memory locked away, but the best thing about it is when he did get there, everything felt okay. That was who he was for me. He was steady. He was protective. He made hard moments feel less scary just by showing up. He was my hero. And if you knew him, you probably also knew that he could make you laugh. Kind of adding on to my sister's. He had his own kind of humor. Sometimes it was goofy. Sometimes it was pushing the edge of what counted as an appropriate joke, although I think he believed they were all appropriate jokes. And honestly, that made them even funnier. He had a way of making ordinary moments memorable. You could be having a completely normal day, and then Dad would say something that would just have everybody laughing and kind of shaking their heads all at the same time. But underneath all of that humor was a man who loved deeply. He loved his family fiercely. He cared about people. He showed up when it mattered. And I think one of the greatest gifts a parent can give their child is the feeling that no matter what happens, you're not facing it alone. And that's what he gave me. I don't think we will ever really realize how much space someone fills in our lives until they're gone. And losing my dad has left a space that can never truly be filled. But I also know this, how lucky I am to have had someone worth missing this much. We do have recordings of his voice, but it's not the same. I'll miss his voice. I'll miss his jokes, even though they were kind of stupid sometimes. Sorry. I'll miss knowing I could call him, because he had a phone in literally every room, and the garage, and the basement, and everywhere. I'll miss the comfort of just having him here, but more than anything, I'm grateful. Grateful that he was my dad. Grateful that I got the time I did with him, and grateful that his love is something I'll carry with me for the rest of my life. I love you, Dad, always.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. As Sis just said, tough act to follow, but I'm going to channel my inner William Sneed, and I'm about to make this shit look good. So when I frame this, my time with Dad, I've had a perspective that a lot of people don't get with their parents. Been his caretaker for going on 10 years. He's my buddy. And so it got me thinking of a quote that we both had bounced around before, and it's where they say, a man is born 1,000 men and dies as one. And what that focuses on is the choices we make, that you have opportunities before you in life, and as you make choices, it whittles its way down. And the more that's bounced around the last couple of days, I thought, you're still all of those other things as you work your way to what you end up being. And so I thought about the roles that Dad had filled in his life. And I tried to put these in order, but at the same time, they're not really in order. And he was a son, a grandson, a nephew, a brother. He was an athlete. That's why he quit smoking when he was 13, 14 years old, so he could be faster at cross country. Never went back. He was an electronics nerd, ahead of his time in a lot of ways. He was an animal lover. He was a coworker. From every story he told me, when it came to factory work, he was shit at it. When he found his position as working in telecommunications, that was a good fit. He was a telephone man, and for those in the know, I&R, installation and repair. He was the one out there in the cold. He was a soldier, not by choice. He was drafted and made the decision to serve his country. He was a medic. He was communications section leader in Vietnam. Those of you that show up to the VFW later, I'll have one of his awards there that tells exactly what he did, and you wouldn't hear him brag about it. He was a ham radio enthusiast. He was a hero. If those of you hadn't seen on the video, there was a situation in 1973 when he helped save a woman and her 2 children from a house fire in Lima. also something that I never heard about until I was in my 20s. He was a cameraman, he was a husband, a father, an uncle, a grandfather, a teacher, a comedian, an audiophile, a cinephile. If he could collect it, he collected it. He was a magician. Remember the finger trick? Anytime he met a baby, that was the first one coming out. He was the data tech, the material coordinator, and then there was a switch when he retired. And when he became a retiree, he became a book lover. He went from reading technical manuals to reading everything. A collector of all, a trivia nerd, but tied into all of that, he was the promise of an easy conversation, an easy friend. The childhood memories that have popped up here recently, him using his telephone van as a taxi service to pick me up from wrestling, where I'd call the collect number and just, hey, I'm ready, pick me up, and hang up real quick. He had this ability with his hearing loss, to where if you knew him, you knew him, that it was always a possibility when you'd get somewhere public, and it would get nice and quiet, and then he'd turn and look at you and, hey, look what that guy's wearing. It's like, hey, shh. Always found a way to make it funny. He was my partner when we would go and play pool for years. He wasn't that good, but he was always there. We had a lot of inside jokes. I actually told him before I shipped off to Iraq that if anything were to happen to me, that if there was a funeral, he had to wear one of those tuxedo T-shirts and keep it lighthearted. And his agreement was, well, then when I die, you have to do the same for me. And I did make the attempt. I ordered it, and Amazon failed. They couldn't get it here in time. And what that tells me is that the wheels are falling off Amazon. Bill Sneed being gone, and they're already hurting. I literally could go on and on about him. The way he looked at life was just so unique. But as I was going through his filing cabinet looking for pictures last week, I stumbled on this little pad that he had written down. And it definitely sums up his reading style towards the end and the way he approached life. And he wrote, intelligence. Some people drink deeply from the fountain of knowledge. Others just stand there and gargle. Dad drank deeply from the fountain of knowledge. And if he had the opportunity to share it with you, it was coming, whether he had it or not. I miss you, Pop.
Amazon is going under. No, so everyone before me has been extremely eloquent in their words. I cannot follow that up. I can do it. No, this is really just about me, but I think my experience reflects a lot of who he was. Yeah. I could write and think, and I could never come up with the words to properly express the love I have for my grandfather, my papaw, and therefore there are no words I could possibly conjure to express the grief that I feel from his absence. But from my earliest memory, my grandfather has been a beacon of love, knowledge, laughter, and stability in my life, and many others. Since I learned how to read, he sought to constantly expand my knowledge of this universe, as that was what most fascinated me. And he was very happy about our mutual love and curiosity for space and the beyond. And what is the speed of light, you may ask? You didn't, but 186,000 miles per second. What's the speed of sound? 769 miles per hour, 760 miles at sea level, 61, excuse me. How far away is the sun? Just over 93 million. None of you asked this, but he constantly grilled me week in and week out, and to make sure that I knew that. Nearly 15 years ago by now, he took me to the Neil Armstrong Air and Space Museum, and I had the time of my life. Even saw him rock from the moon. On one journey in his Astrovan, I noticed a bundle of wires hanging from his rearview mirror and asked him about it. And that was the day I learned about fiber optics. I don't know why he had fiber optics in his van, but anyway. he seemed so eager to share that information with me, and he was very eager to share any new knowledge with me at all. And even if he was well aware, it probably wouldn't stick during my young years. Just a couple of months ago, he quizzed me for the last time on the speed of light and distance from the sun and all of that. And admittedly, it had been so long since he had done that I fumbled, and he scolded me jokingly. But I still wonder if he was a little disappointed that all those years didn't stick. But I'll make a point to never forget it again. Oh, shoot, I lost where I was. Oh, when I was at his house, my favorite show to watch was How the Universe Works. He introduced me to Cowboys versus Aliens, probably too soon, admittedly. And I loved his collection of books because there were so many space ones for me to pore over. Another favorite pastime of mine at his house was to try and open the safe in his bedroom, and it seemed so mysterious and unknown to me. Thank God I never cracked that code. If you know, you know. The coiled snake was just the first thing. And almost every time we went out, he'd wear his Vietnam veteran hat. And with his hand in mine, I would witness countless people stop and thanking him for his service. And in turn, I would learn to do the same with others with similar hats because I understood what that sacrifice had meant. On another note, his constant hunger for more knowledge will forever inspire me, as others have said before me. From very early memories, I remember him making lists of books he wanted to read, books he had already read, books he wanted to buy, etc. Books, knowledge, puzzles, games. He was always learning, always seeking, always testing himself. And I think that's how we all should be. The universe is ever changing and we should change with it, and he very much understood that. What a guy. I was his little buddy. He took me to see the Lorax in theaters. We went to Beer Barrel to get an EBA deep dish pizza, and for those of you that don't know, that means everything but anchovies, which was the line neither one of us would cross. And I like to joke that also I'll eat anything that doesn't eat me first. We went to QP more times than I could ever count. But in his big gray Astrovan, it was just me that allowed me to beg for the front seat every once in a while, much to my mother's chagrin, because I was like 9, 10. But I think he knew the scolding he'd get from my mother was worth the joy and excitement in me. But again, it was just me most of the time, despite there being plenty of room for all my cousins. So for so many years, I wondered, was I the favorite? Was I just too hard to coordinate times with them living in Fort Wayne? But over the years, I discovered the real reason. He was simply giving me what my cousins already had, and that was a father figure. He was so much more like a dad to me than a grandfather. And for the reasons I told you and many more, he held me accountable when necessary. But, God, I can't even see anymore. And he lifted me up and built me up at all times. He would always make sure I knew just how smart I was so that nobody could ever tell me otherwise. And he loved me unconditionally. I will miss him forever, and I have no idea how to wrap this up other than a poem I found from a newspaper clipping in his stuff, but death is nothing at all. I have only slipped away into the next room. Whatever we were to each other, we still are. Call me by my old familiar name. Speak to me in the same easy way you always have. Laugh as we have always laughed at the little jokes we enjoyed together. Play, smile, Think of me. Pray for me. Life means all that it ever meant. It is the same as it always was. There is absolute, unbroken continuity. Why should I be out of your mind because I am out of your sight? I am but waiting for you for an interval, somewhere very near, just around the corner. All is well. Nothing is past. Nothing has been lost. One brief moment, and all will be as it was before, only better, infinitely happier. We will be one together forever. Thank you.
This completes the service here at the gravesite.